And all God's people said, amen. Come on, give it up for these guys, man. I love it. God bless you, brother. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Well, I tell you what, man. Jamar, thank you so much for letting God use you, brother. Give it up for Jamar Andrews one last time. That was so cool. I love it. They're bringing up some chairs real quick here, and I'm so grateful. This is a cool moment here just to get some interaction a little bit. It was interesting at lunch. People just asking different questions about the Conservative Baptist Network or how can they get involved on a local level or a state level and those kinds of things. And just very quickly, the Conservative Baptist Network launched a couple years ago with the desire to be used by God within the Southern Baptist Convention and family to make a difference, to help move the needle in a way that says, no, the sufficiency of Scripture, that is enough. We're going to stand for the Word. Critical race theory is not biblical, etc. All these kinds of things. And so we've seen these partnerships and relationships really begin to flourish. You've got state chapters that have launched across the country. We've got new state chapters that are happening. And those are those hubs of fellowship. You know, one of the things that I've been a part of are a lunch event here or there where we have 10, 15 pastors or church members that are just concerned about these things, or online engaging with people saying this is what it's about. So this is just another part of that. This conference, it's a way to connect, be encouraged, equipped, etc. And we're going to continue to build on that right now in this next hour. And then we're going to have one final message before this evening and a little bit more music. And then we're just going to come back tonight. I know some folks couldn't be here this afternoon, but they're coming back this evening. So we're excited about all of that. Let me just bring up here today on our panel today, Rod Martin. Where's my man Rod Martin at? Is Rod coming here? There he is in the back. Rod Martin, I thank God for him helping be a part of just the launch of this entire network called the Conservative Baptist Network. I thank God for him. He's involved with so many different ventures, and God's used him in some powerful ways. And Rod, they should be handing you a microphone, sir. They got that? Okay. Are they bringing him up there? Oh, they're going to bring him to him. All right, very good. Yeah, awesome. Come on up here, Rod. You're doing great, man. And so great for Rod Martin. Jamar, we want you back up here, my man. Come on up here. Do you mind being a part of our panel, my friend? Thank you, Jamar. Thank you for all you're doing for your church as well, man. And just an awesome, awesome word. Grateful to have Michael O'Fallon with us today, who is leading founder and president of Sovereign Nations. And so we appreciate him. Thank you so much, Michael, for being with us today. Grateful for you, sir. And then Ryan Halfenbein. He got to make a brief testimony introduction there at lunch. And Ryan is with Standing for Freedom Center, Liberty University. So very thankful for us. Why don't you welcome all of our guests with us today? Grateful for you guys being here. This is cool. Thank you, Ryan. Oh, look at you, man, being so gracious. I like that, man. So Ryan and I served on a panel a couple years ago on the campus of Liberty University, and you're still very enthusiastic. You got a dynamic smile. Going to be a part of our culture, Engaging the Culture conference tomorrow as well. Guys, thank you for being here. There's a lot at stake if we do not engage with what's going on in Southern Baptist life, with what's going on in our culture. Maybe just to kind of tee this up, and then we're going to break down some specifics with that for the next several minutes, but just what's at stake, Rod, if we don't do that? Or, you know, people have a decision to make, right? I think that was well said this morning. We're wavering. We've got a lot of different things happening on this side and that side. I think pastors get scared of what to do. I think Christians are going, what does that mean? Just what's at stake? Just take a couple of minutes, guys, to kind of set the foundation here, or the focus, if we don't get engaged on the SBC side, cultural side, that kind of thing.
The SBC.
Oh, yep, there we go. Turned it up. Yep. Sorry, should be on.
Hello?
There we go.
There we go.
Yep, there you go.
The SBC matters more than a lot of people realize. I mean, first of all, we're the largest Protestant denomination in this country. This country is not the largest nation in this world, but it's by and far the most powerful. You can calculate that any number of ways, certainly economically, certainly militarily, but most important is culturally. When Disney decides to indoctrinate your children and grandchildren in transgenderism, they're exporting that to the entire planet. But the people who have the most impact on that are right here. Your pulpit matters more to the future of a child in Kenya than almost any other single thing. A lot of our pastors don't grasp that fact. In fact, I was debating with a we will euphemistically say moderate, on Twitter just yesterday, who clearly doesn't believe his pulpit matters. And it's just mind-numbing to me. If I were a communist, I would look at you guys and be terrified. You're the only group of people in the world that has millions and millions of people show up in your building once a week for a lecture. Why do you think they want to suppress the church? Why do you think that in every totalitarian society in the history of the world, they have first suppressed the church? Because you have an immutable standard in an unchanging book written by a creator God that a regulator or a legislator or a bureaucrat doesn't get to modify by decree in a smoke-filled room. So, the SBC, we're 11% of America's churches. That's an awful lot of churches. 11% of the total in this country. But it's much, much bigger than that. In one crucial statistic I want you to take away. We're 11% of America's churches, but our 6 seminaries educate 1/3 of America's seminary students. That's a lot more than us. Now, some of those people are going to be the education minister in a Southern Baptist church. Some of those people are going to be the music minister in a Southern Baptist church. I understand that not everybody in those seminaries is going to be the senior pastor, but an awful lot of those people are going to be the senior pastor in other denominations' churches, in independent Baptist churches, in Bible churches, even some Presbyterian churches and Methodist churches. I don't know why they'd want to hire our people, but I'm sure glad they do. And they do, all the time. If you let those 6 institutions go woke or any other thing, egalitarian, you name it, what you're doing is you are poisoning the body of Christ, not just our neighborhood of it, but all of it. This is an existential crisis for the body of Christ and the entire world served by it, because how will they hear without a preacher? But if the preacher they hear is preaching a false gospel, it would be better if they'd never heard it at all. That's what's at stake. So let me leave you with one other statistic. We just got news just moments ago. You understand, when we have a convention out west, we normally have between 4,000 and 5,000 total messengers. As of the last 15 minutes, there are already 5,002 messengers pre-registered for Anaheim. Any of you who are on the fence waiting to figure out if we should fight this year or some other year, as I've been hearing people say now since Nashville, if you're still on that fence, clue in, buddy. Because there's going to be an historic turnout in Anaheim. The EC thinks it's 10,000. I think it's more. Somebody's going to decide the future. It better be you.
Yeah. Well, a great word, Rod. And I'll tell you something encouraging. You know, Rod, we were in a meeting a couple years ago, and I remember Rod saying, he's like, look, if we're going to take a stand, it's going to take us bringing an extra 7,000 messengers to, I think you said 7,000, maybe you said 70, Rod, but you're a big thinker. It was 7,000, I believe. And I remember sitting in that meeting going, man, that's a tall order. I don't know if we could do it. And how many showed up in Nashville last year?
16,500, where a normal year is about 8,500.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is it can happen, and we need to build on that. And that's it's what's at stake. And so, Jamar, I mean, you're
one last thing on that, Brad. Yeah. I want to remind you, some of you have forgotten, some of you got so overwhelmed by the experience of losing an election, and we didn't lose all the elections. We passed the abolish abortion resolution over the absolute opposition of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. Think about it. We had to pull it out of committee, which took a 2/3 vote because they wouldn't even report it out. We won first vice president of the convention. You heard Lee Brand last night. But president of the convention, we ran Mike Stone, whom you heard last night, and that's one of the best sermons I ever heard in my life. Cool. Mike Stone lost by about 550 votes. If we had flipped 300 votes on the second ballot, he'd be president of the SBC. And that is like going to the Super Bowl in your first season and losing by a field goal. You guys should not be depressed about that. You should be invigorated. We should turn out with 10,000 or 20,000 more messengers in Anaheim. We got to go.
Yeah, I love it. But that's what's at stake. And when you hear that as a local church pastor, Jamar, I think when you're looking at that and going, okay, I see pastors, they're scared. But there's a lot at stake, right? Do you sense that, or do you see what's at stake on those fronts culturally, SBC life?
Yeah, no doubt. Obviously you've articulated it well, but I would agree that the direction of our denomination, as it's been, said, matters because I believe spiritually things matter. We have the Bible tells us that these things were written about Israel in old times as an example for us. Mm-hmm. So we understand, we don't have to wonder what's going to happen. It's black and white on the pages we have before us that, when a nation, when a people spiritually begin to drift, the rest of the culture at large, it reflects that drift. And so I for sure would say
Great point.
That's
Great point.
Where we are.
Yeah, Michael, I appreciate you, sir. As when I follow this guy on social media, it's just you got such great insight, my friend. And I gotta be honest, I don't understand all the words you say sometimes that you use. But
you mean like heretic? Or?
No, I know the word heretic, my friend. But but you're out there on a lot of different fronts, sir. What do you see at stake, man? What do you see, whether it's on the SBC side, culturally, in America, beyond, or just maybe a couple things that you're going, this is what's at stake right here. This is what we're up against. And then we'll break it down here as we move along.
I would echo some of the things that my friend Rod just stated. There is a suppression, but it's not a suppression in the way that you would actually think it is. You would think of the old Soviet model or the old Maoist model of destroying the churches, eliminating the churches, eliminating faith, when in fact what's happening is the increase of faith, but not the faith that you and I believe in. What you're going through right now is really much like what happened in China between around the late 1960s and the early 70s, which is a cultural revolution. The thing is that it's both in the macro cultural revolution side in America as a whole and in Western civilization as a whole, but also within each one of the organizations that, to use Rudi Dutschke's terminology that he used in the late 60s, early 70s, that Herbert Marcuse agreed with, is you have the long march through the institutions. And when you say the long march through the institutions, you're talking about education, corporate, religious, political. Everything must be marched through to gain complete control. Now, when I say this, here's the way, I'm going to use a little short story if you give me just a moment. Let me see, how long did Rod take? And let me try to make sure I take the same amount of time.
Don't base everything on Rod today, but he's a good model, no question.
But here's a way that I think that you're not going to be able to forget this. And I want to use the example of the strawberry. When I say strawberry, I want you to think of the gospel, and in this sense, the Southern Baptist Convention. Imagine 70 years ago, an old grandfather takes his young grandson out to the family farm where they have been producing the most delicious strawberries, and everybody in the area loves them. He takes his grandson out, picks a fresh strawberry out from the field, and he says, "Grandson, try this strawberry. It would be the most amazing thing you've ever had in your life." This grandson takes a bite, goes, "Oh, Grandfather, you're right. Our family strawberries are amazing." And as this grandson grew, and as he got older, he said, the thing I really want to make sure is I want to make sure our family strawberries are shared by everyone, and that everyone has an opportunity to love them and taste them and see really what our family was about. Well, he graduates college, he gets a marketing degree, and the first thing he does, he starts to run the family farm. His grandfather's passed away right now, but he wants to pass on the family legacy. So he brings others to try these strawberries. He starts to distribute them to other places and other localities. And everybody's going, "Wow, that family strawberries are the best we've ever had." Before you know it, someone comes to him and says, "You know what? If you take those strawberries and you preserve them and create jam and jelly out of them, a whole lot more people can start to enjoy them." So you go, "Okay, you know what? Let's take that family strawberry. Let's add some preservatives. Let's add some sugar." And you start to produce the family strawberries and jams and jellies. But before you know it, Then all of a sudden, a candy maker comes and says, you know what we want to do? We want to take your strawberries. Now, we can't take the strawberry themselves because this needs to be candy. It needs to be sitting on a shelf for 3 years. We need to be able to sell it. We're going to change some things about your strawberries, but we're going to keep the essence of the taste, and still there'll be some strawberry there. You're like, you know what? That's great. Well, now you got a strawberry empire. But then the final step, and this is the step of what is called simulacra. It's making a simulacrum of the thing that was true, and you're beginning to make shadows of that thing until what ends up at the end bears no resemblance to what the thing was in the beginning. So then all of a sudden, we get past the candy maker. Now it's the soda pop maker. Well, we want to make strawberry soda. But we really want to get the taste of your strawberries that were so good, that everybody loves so much. But we can't really have any part of that strawberry. But you know what we've done? We've found some chemicals that were within some of those properties. It might not be exactly what's in strawberry, but it sure tastes an awful lot like your strawberry. So you put the family name on the soda pop, and it's distributed worldwide. But the soda pop bears no resemblance to the original strawberry. 70 years later, that now boy is now 70 years old. He takes his grandson out to the field to try the family's original strawberries. He takes his grandson out in 2022 and says, here, I want you to try the family strawberries. And the boy says, oh, grandfather, I love our strawberries. I just love the strawberry soda that you make. So the grandson takes the strawberry and bites it and says, oh, what is this? This is disgusting. What do you call this? Well, grandson, that's a strawberry. No, it's not. This is not the strawberry that I love. The strawberry that I love is like the soda pop that I enjoy every day. And this bears no resemblance to it. And what we've done is we've allowed folks to come in and take the very essence of the gospel itself, to take what the Southern Baptist Convention really was about in terms of the preservation of the gospel, in terms of being able to share the gospel and propagate the faith. And what we've done is we've created a fake, something that resembles it but is not, and yet we still call it that. And now we're propagating that fakeness everywhere. And you want to know how? And I'm going to get myself in trouble, and you too, by saying this. Because we've had 2 back-to-back presidents of the Southern Baptist Convention that received their sermons from Dawson, a liberal group, that get up and preach on Sunday morning. And those are not sermons that they are preparing. They are repeating word for word what liberal progressive organizations are giving them. It's fake. It's not true. It bears no resemblance to the original. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are not invigorated, if you are not convicted by this, I don't know what else I can tell you. This is for the very salvation of the gospel and evangelicalism itself. Because the SBC is in the middle of this, we start talking about critical race theory and intersectionality. Those were brought in wholeheartedly in 2019, and they did everything they could do to make sure that we didn't get a chance to get those out. That is adding in those properties that have nothing to do with the gospel itself. And instead of the gospel of grace and salvation, you have the gospel of vengeance. Yeah. You have the gospel of revenge. And that is what we are now selling. Yeah. This must change.
No, it's a great point, man. Great. No, I mean, it's a great that's a great analogy, Michael. And that's what I'm saying. Like Michael, you're very gifted. You're able to see and process these things. And I think sometimes people are living in this moment and they don't know exactly what's really transpired. Going, oh, I'm aware of this now. I know. And you're going, I know, but it's been unfolding for 3 decades, and here's where we are. So really appreciate your insight and ability to process that. Ryan, one of the things that you allowed me, well, Rod had come as well to your Standing for Freedom event there at Liberty. Religious liberty, I think was it COVID? Was the pandemic and all that was going on? I think
it was 2 weeks to slow the spread.
Well, yeah,
but we were
like 9 months into it.
8 or 9 months,
9 months into it.
That's
yeah.
right.
But we were on your campus, but there was a lot going on between churches and what can we do and what should we be doing and all these kind of things in Liberty. This is a question I want to ask you, and we'll just kind of start pivoting here to go a little bit deeper here. Can we stand for truth in our churches and our convention and stand for truth and faith in America at the same time?
The answer is yes, and you don't have to pick one of those.
Okay.
You can just pick truth.
Okay.
And you can stand for it in your church and in the public square. You do not have to. This is a false dilemma that is being foisted upon you. It is a complete lie to say that you either preach the gospel or you fight the culture war, but you cannot do both. That's right. It's a complete lie. That's right. Let me say that again. The lie is that you either preach the gospel or you fight the culture war, but you cannot do both. That is a lie. Yes. You absolutely can do both. And in fact, the best culture warriors are those whose allegiance is to Jesus Christ and the gospel alone. Amen. And they're the most effective people at going out there because they're not afraid. They're not leading with a wet thumb, as Mike Stone told me this morning, right? So they understand what's going on and what's at stake. And I'll just to kind of echo, by the way, that was fabulous what you just heard. But the reality is that the church will never be shut down, okay? The question is, what kind of church are we going to have? There are churches in China. There were always churches in Russia. There were churches in Hitler's Germany. There were churches in Hitler's Germany. They continued to do Sunday sermons, singing Mighty Fortress is Our God on Sunday morning, while the cattle cars are being loaded on the outside with Jews being shipped off to Auschwitz. That literally happened. The question is, are you going to stand for the gospel? And are you going to do it right now? That's right. People are right now, what you just saw was the qualifying round in 2020. We just went through the qualifying round. I don't have to guess at what certain churches are going to do. I just saw what their pastor did. They're not going to all of a sudden grow a spine. It's up to you. And by the way, what you just said about one out of every three are being educated, and that's our lay people. That's our chairman of the deacons. That's all of those folks that are in our churches. It's not just people that are hired to be pastor or music minister or youth leader. It's all those people. We're educating the future leaders of Christendom largely in seminaries that are compromised on these issues. We need to be re-educated. It's the truth, and rediscipled in this, honestly. So you don't have to pick one. Right, go ahead.
Give me an encouraging illustration of something you saw in the pandemic, because I just know you were traveling everywhere. I mean, everybody was engaged, but give me one example, just something you go, man, I just appreciated their leadership. I mean, you know where you saw the lack of spine. But
well, obviously, I appreciate John MacArthur. I'm going to give you some. I went to seminary with this guy, Jacob Rayom.
Yeah.
Jacob Rayom is a pastor at Trinity Bible Church up in Canada. And he went through some of the worst stuff during COVID. He's in a legal battle. He has hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines personally, millions of dollars for his church. He's fighting all the way through. Had it not been for the truckers, and by the way, the churches got on board with supporting the truckers. Had it not been for them, these churches would be shut down right now.
Wow.
There was pushback.
Yeah.
Are you on the side of Team Freedom right now? Right. That's the question I want to ask you all. You know, I love the Conservative Baptist Network. By the way, you know, I work with a lot of different folks that are part of different denominations. Some are unaffiliated, and they're on the side of Team Freedom.
Yeah.
We have the ability to debate our theological differences when we're in prison. We have plenty of time for that. Right now, though, we can do a lot more by staying out of prison. And we have to be willing to stand up.
No, I appreciate that, man. It's a great word. On that same thread, and I want to make sure I get Michael and Rod to answer this here in a minute, but Rod, just in that same vein, here's something I want to specifically get to, because I know we're all grappling with this. Some have labeled standing for truth here in America. So if there's no difference, you're going to stand for truth, and it's going to be for the culture, it's going to be in the church, whatever, that's fine. But think about it this way. Some have labeled standing for truth here in America as Christian nationalism. Is that a valid objection? How would you respond to that? What does it even mean? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I think we need to bring some definition for believers and pastors going on right here, Rod.
Well, we're finding more and more there are young guys who are treating Christian nationalism like everybody treated deplorable. They understand that it's an epithet, they understand that it's slander, and they're adopting it as their own, like Hillary calling us all a basket of deplorables and the vast right-wing conspiracy and all those things. So I predict that over the next year, you're going to see more and more Christians adopt the term Christian nationalist and actually flesh out a meaning for it. And good for those who do that. That's great. I'm probably not going to be part of that, but but who knows where we'll be in a year. I'm definitely deplorable. And just ask the other team. I'm really deplorable. Here's what Christian nationalism is. They spent the last 5, 6, 7 years demonizing the term nationalism. They mean by nationalism patriotism because they hate America. You understand that? Yes. And you don't have to look further than our Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission to see what I mean, because every 4th of July we get this repeated tweet about how if my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray, then I will seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear them from heaven and heal their land. Okay. The ERLC tells us that doesn't apply to America. That only applied to ancient Israel. So, okay, let's think about that for a second. Is there something in that verse that wouldn't apply to absolutely everybody everywhere forever?
Right.
What part of that is a ceremonial law? But the ERLC has a bee in its bonnet that it must not apply to America. All I hear is how evil American Christianity is. Well, I was just over right before the pandemic, actually, at the triennial convention of the World Evangelical Alliance. And, they were singing all the same songs we sing in my church. They were sharing all the same ways we do in my church. They were doing it in multiple languages, but they didn't seem a lot different. They were from Indonesia and India and Kenya and South Africa and Nigeria and Honduras and Guatemala and Brazil and Canada and here. And they were all the same. What is it that they hate about American Christianity so much? What is so uniquely sinful about you? And of course, you know what it is. They're globalists. They hate America. They hate nationalism because they have rightly identified the word nationalism as meaning the right of individuals to govern themselves. Right. What they're really opposed to is that. They have identified the word nationalism with Hitler and, whatever, because they want you to submit to international organizations that will set norms for you with no accountability to an electorate anywhere. Now, is that your pastor down the street who voted for Ed Litton? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there are a bunch of elitists running a bunch of our institutions who are absolutely bought into that, who have absolutely drunk the Kool-Aid. I have an enormous problem with that because all of those institutions that they prefer don't just hate your country, they hate your religious liberty. Yes. If you don't believe me, check out Justin Trudeau. That's right. Have you ever heard in your lifetime of 250 armed policemen being sent to surround a church to keep people out of it? But it happened in Canada, supposedly a very nice country filled with nice people. Supposedly a country that believes in the rule of law. So Christian nationalism is the end of a chain of being, if you'll forgive the term, of let's demonize patriotism by calling it nationalism and associating that with Hitler. Now let's call it white nationalism. You'll notice we just had a shooter in New York who was an avowed black nationalist and nobody said a word about it. So it's only white nationalism because you're a racist, don't you know it? And then we'll call it Christian nationalist, so we'll make it sound like you're the Ayatollah. Right. It is all designed to demonize you. That's what it is. So don't be surprised when a bunch of 30-year-old pastors, and have you ever met a 30-year-old man? Because, you know, they're kind of boisterous and they like, you know, sticking their, you know, their thumb at their nose, you know, at the other side. When they start calling themselves Christian nationalists, they're not saying they're theocrats, they're saying they're deplorables. That's what's about to happen. But make no mistake, it is exactly like what Hillary did to all of us. It is an epithet. They are calling you a racist. They're calling you an imperialist, which ironically is the exact opposite of nationalism. It is in every way designed to marginalize the majority in America.
Yeah. No, good explanation, Rod. Jamar, I want to come back to you here in just a minute on just from a pastor standpoint and a local church standpoint being engaged, but I want to just follow up with Michael on that because literally, Michael, and you see this on social media a little bit easier, but if a pastor even talks about standing for freedom in America, they're just completely annihilated by some sectors in Southern Baptist life even. And so where is this going? I mean, what is, I mean, I appreciate the definition and so forth, Rod. I'm just curious, what are you seeing that? You know, where's that coming from and how do we deal with that?
You know, Brad, and for everybody that's here, I think the best way to understand what's happening in the Southern Baptist Convention and what we're going through is to take about 4 steps back to get a satellite view. And once you see how the same thing that's happening in the Southern Baptist Convention is actually happening in the Presbyterian Church in America, is actually happening in Campus Crusade for Christ, which now is known as CRU, which is now happening in the Atheists in America as well, the exact same play, which is now happening in Roman Catholicism, which is now happening in the Church of Mormon, which is now happening in every major corporation, which is now happening in every single affinity group at the same time. Don't forget that. Now, about what Rod was just, you know, eloquently discussing a few moments ago, understand your best argument back to this, and I can't take credit for this. Nigel Farage said this to me in 2017 when I was discussing the same issue. When it comes to the blame of us being nationalists, or that we are white Christian nationalists, which is if you've read the Washington Post about me, and I'm half Cuban, you would think that that's what I'm all about. By the way, I'm married to a Chinese woman. But somehow I'm a white Christian nationalist. And I work with everybody, by the way.
Mixed up.
So, yeah, they are. Born in Miami and Little Havana off of Northwest 2nd Street in Cayocha. Okay, so anyway, but what they are, they're calling you a nationalist. They're super nationalists. That's what they are. And they're not Christian, they're metaphysical. And when I say metaphysical, think about the things metaphysically that they're telling you that you can believe. That men and women can become either women or men by their magical powers and thoughts. That's a metaphysical magic. It's hocus pocus. Hocus est corpus meus, I believe, is the Latin for this is my body for transubstantiation. It's the same sort of magical transformation that somehow now we can all make. And then I have to call you by your pronouns. So you are compelling me to have speech in order to how I address you now. And if I don't address you according to your magical powers, now I can actually be found guilty of that. So now we're forced into this way of doing things, and now all of a sudden, over the past 2 days, everybody has realized that, well, what George Orwell was actually writing was prescient. It wasn't fiction. It was future casting, because he understood what was going to be coming our way. And now we have the Ministry of Truth with Biden. And with the Biden administration. And do you think that that's going to stop with social media and with the news? You've got another thing coming to you.
Yeah,
Why do you think this is happening in all the churches? Because if you think about churches from their perspective, what do you see with the church? You see with a church, a seminary, you see this as if it's a local news station. You have people on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings and Sunday evenings and other outings where you are giving them an hour and a half of your time and they have to take notes. And they're expected to remember what you actually just said. Well, that's a whole lot better than CBS News or CNN. They've got your rapt attention. So for them, with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of churches all over the United States, it's like, well, that is really what we need to make sure that we capture. So all of a sudden, if you take that and say, well, we need to control that messaging and that narrative too. Why do you think it's important that, as I just said, every single faith, Every single affinity group, even hiking groups, knitting groups, are all doing the exact same thing that's been happening with critical race theory, intersectionality, radical subjectivism. All of that has been happening in those groups too at the same time because they want to control the new narrative. And if you don't push back with everything that you have right now, we could lose this through a dark age. Now, I have a very, my eschatological position is I'm historic premill. I know some of you that are very positive or post-mill like Rod, and under some delusion. But, I'm just kidding. I love him. I have lots of post-mill friends, so I can joke with them. But the fact is that God could see us go through a dark age. That could very well happen in either one of our eschatological positions. That could happen with a positive end on the other side. But people will have to suffer. The reason we haven't suffered is because we're in America. If you were a Christian in Syria, you'd be going, well, it's not too positive right now. If you were an actual Christian who believes in orthodox things in China, where you're not allowed to believe those things because you're not part of the Three Self Church, you're not part of some of the other cults that have been formed there that are actually protected by the Chinese government, and I used to bring pastors to China, by the way, you'll see that you must have the state-approved doctrine, the state-approved message and narrative. Otherwise, you're in trouble. I went on too long, but I apologize.
No, it's incredible, and that's what I'm saying. I just think people need to understand, Michael, what is happening. And Jamar, you're a pastor. I just want to ask this. Why does it matter that Christians, but especially pastors, man, get engaged and publicly stand? I mean, you just heard Michael walk through this of this is where we're at. What did you say? The ministry of truth? Is that what or disinformation or something like that? Right. It's insane. This is what's happening right now in America. As a pastor, how does that hit you, and what can we do, man, as pastors in this time?
Yeah, I would say a few things. First, thank you, brothers, for y'all's contributions here, but I don't think we have valued sometimes as pastors the importance of a biblical worldview. So ultimately, I don't have a problem with being, excited and proud that I'm an American. Well, the reason why is because Acts 17 is in the Bible. Acts 17:26, which tells me that God determined the times in which I live and the boundaries of my habitation, meaning he intended for me to be here. And so ultimately, I think we have to recognize that, the people that are in the pews are maybe a little bit behind in some ways of the ramifications as a whole.
Sure.
So they hear these things. But in families, though, they've sent their kids to college, they've sent them to these, liberal institutions, and they come home with this stuff, and they are the ones that are spreading this. That's normally, from my perspective, the first, exposure that a lot of families that, I've talked with have as their children come in. So I just think that, for us as pastors, we have to begin to have a robust, intentional way of helping people understand the biblical worldview is how we have to see things from Genesis to Revelation and bring to bear, the text on these issues. For example, and I'll be quick here, when all the struggle between, race and George Floyd and how all of this is going to work out, I just saw the church just go after the worldly narrative as if the Bible is not clear on this issue. You don't have to get very far into the Word to see God created them male, female, Adam and Eve. Means we all come from one source. We got the same parents, right? You don't have to get very far into seeing his view about these things in Acts, or when you look at that, from one man he created all nations. So, but how many sermons did you hear coming from those particular passages?
That's a great point.
Did Jesus, when he was here, did he ever have any run-ins that would have any racial or difficulties in terms of overtone? How about John chapter 4, when he was sitting down talking to a Samaritan woman? Right. That thing is dripping with it. You got all this history in the past. You have this present encounter. And so I just feel like sometimes we have not understood the treasure and the power that is before us to unleash that, to allow people to recognize and understand the Word of God is helping us to understand how we navigate these things. And I think that has to happen on the ground level, grassroots movement, to be able to handle that. And I'll just say this, this is not the first time that Christians have had to go through, these types of challenges. So right. I'm trusting that, the Lord is going to continue to work and move. But we do have the last book of the Bible that tells us that this world is moving toward a one world, leader, all these things. So
Sure.
we know God has given us the advance notice, right?
Right.
So as we start seeing the shadows of these things, it should, A, encourage us.
Yeah.
Because He already told us.
Right.
But B, it should also inform us of how we begin to, encourage each other in the faith, reach out to unbelievers, help them to have a framework to be able to navigate these things that are coming.
Such a good word, man. Thank you for sharing that, brother. Very, very good. And Ryan, I'm thinking here when Jamar talks about that God has ordained us in this moment, and we're here right now, the word of stewardship. I mean, we've been given this freedom. We've been given these liberties. What are we doing with it, Michael? What are we doing with it, Rod? How do we stand for that in the face of our own fellow brothers in pulpits? Almost castigating people for doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's where we are.
Not almost.
Well, we are right there. I mean, it's what they do. So, you know what I'm saying? What do we do with that?
Am I still on?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool, because I can't even. Okay.
No, you're good.
Okay, so many, by the way, I hope this is all being recorded because there's been so many good things said and shared here, and I hope y'all go back and listen to this. And I'm trying to capture it all before it rolls off the table because I'm I want to follow up on that and on that and on that. Amazing stuff. I would just say, he was mentioning the ministry of truth
run with that, yeah.
and the gospel. The church is the first ministry of truth. Okay? And we have to go back to our story, which is really His story. You've been grafted in if you are truly in Christ. So you need to know your story and get your story straight, which means you have to be biblical. A couple of things. Some pastors that are in this room and some lay leaders that are in this room, if you do not have a strong, robust education ministry that extends beyond Sunday morning, get one fast. You need to be absolutely serious about what's happening in public education. There needs to be an exit strategy. If you don't have a school that you've already started, I don't care how small it is. Start one right now. 10 people, 15 people. Start a homeschooling consortium. There's online programs. Liberty University has one. We have over 10,000 students enrolled in homeschooling across the country through Liberty Online Academy. There's all kinds of choices. You do not have to spend what it costs on a Mercedes-Benz to get them a private option. Get one now. Vladimir Lenin said, "Give me your young for 4 years. The seeds that I sow will not be uprooted." Take that seriously for a second. This is the long march through the institutions that Mike was talking about. It's a tangential universe where everything still exists, but it's been assimilated. And the Maoists are now in charge. And they've gone mainstream. And it looks like America, but it looks like America from Man in the High Castle. Yes. If you've not seen that series, check it out. You don't have to. I'm not giving you an endorsement. I'm just saying it looks like something from an alternate universe. Are y'all tracking with me?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you absolutely have to get serious about it.
Yeah.
And for the woke joke, wokey McWoke-faced pastors, I laugh at them. Honestly, I want to be serious, but there's no credibility here. And other people are laughing too. Look past them. They're just dogs barking at passing cars. We've got to get serious, and we got to get mobilized and motivated. And are we on the same team or not? I think that we are. I'm looking for people that are willing to die and to bleed for the cause of liberty. By the way, our founders had a profound love for this country. They loved God even more. My grandfather, who I buried and preached his funeral, part of the greatest generation, okay, one of the things I tell him all the time, every time July 4th, I get angry. Every time July 4th comes around, I'm being lectured on what it is to love this country. Let me tell you, my grandfather did more than those people in Nashville ever did for this country.
That's right, dude.
And you know what? He did more for the church than they will ever do today.
It's a great word, man.
These people built this denomination. I just want you to know that. They built it. They gave their widow's mite. They sacrificed more. Don't tell me that they had a false idol in their life. They built these institutions. They absolutely do matter. We have got to get serious about defending them, or we're going to lose it all. Now, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. Whether, I don't care if you're pre-mill, post-mill, whatever. We could enter into a dark era, but here's my encouragement. Here's my encouragement. Alexander Solzhenitsyn believed that the Soviet Empire would last 1,000 years. He really believed that. Freedom is fragile, but so is tyranny. Now, I'm encouraged all the time when I hear about how brittle China's CCP is. They could fall overnight. You think, oh, how could they do that? They're so powerful, whatever. They came really close. They came really close in 2019. Mm-hmm. There were all kinds of economic measures and metrics. By the way, Trump's economic policy was absolutely working on tariffs. Yep. They were being destroyed. Had it not been for PPE, okay, had it not been for COVID, which they unleashed from a Wuhan lab, had they not released that onto the world, it would look a whole lot different than it does today. We spent $10 trillion trying to defend it, and all of that. All I'm saying is tyranny is very, very fragile. Alexander Solzhenitsyn lived to see the end of the communist empire. He did. Now, we defeated it for about 2 decades, right, and it's gone cultural. Mm-hmm. So this current revolution looks much, much different than Marxism did before. One last thing, I'll say this. Frederick Engels and Karl Marx have us all fooled. There is no thing that is not political. Mm-hmm. So I want to be clear. When people say, I don't want to preach on politics, a Marxist has never heard of a subject that is not political. Everything is political, okay? If you're choosing not to engage with those issues, you're choosing political correctness. But there is no way to avoid politics, not in 2022.
Yeah, no, that is a very, very good word. Rod, I'm going to end with you, and before you pick up on that, we just saw something mammoth with Elon Musk buying Twitter, and that was a big deal. I heard you were about to buy CNN Plus.
Not CNN Plus.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Maybe it was something different.
Definitely not.
I had heard that, Rod, and Michael verified it, but I don't know.
And look, that actually raises a really good point. You know, Elon's not a believer, and you know, a lot of these guys are doing some really great things, but you need to pray for them. It's fine to cheer, it's fine to tweet about it, but pray for these guys.
That's a good point. Yep.
Elon Musk needs prayer. You know, there are a lot of towering figures in our world today that you kind of treat like off there somewhere. They're just people. Mm-hmm. They need Jesus. The ones who know Jesus may need Jesus more than some of the other ones because they're fighting the fight on the front line in ways that the average person will never understand. So pray for these guys. Pray for actors you like. Pray for business leaders. Pray for the president. You may have noticed the president is ill. Now, he's a terrible human being, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't pray for him. That means you should pray for him. We really need to get more deliberate about that. We need to pray more about Anaheim. We need to pray more about the convention. It would be infinitely better if the people whose ideas we're opposing, because I really can't think of any person I'm opposing per se in the SBC, but some of their ideas are truly terrible and have to be dealt with. Yes. It would be better if the Lord tapped them on the shoulder and got them to see it his way a little better, and we could reconcile. But the way that's going to happen is you're going to have to show up. So let's make this really personal. You know how the SBC works. A president who is elected every year, so we have to do this over and over, will appoint a committee on committees. We're Baptists. We actually have a committee about committees. We have a committee on committees. He appoints that by himself, but it appoints a committee on nominations. And in theory, the messengers vote on who the committee on nominations picks, but in reality, there are about 10 minutes to debate that. So really, the committee on nominations picks the trustees of all of our entities. Our 6 seminaries, the International Mission Board, North American Mission Board, all of them. So that president is super important. And you know who's going to pick the president? The people who show up. And it's just that simple. Now, if you say you love the Lord, but you won't steward what he gives you, Do you really want to stand before Jesus someday and explain that? Because you have been handed the most amazing engine for missions in the history of the world. You have been handed the most amazing engine of theological education in the history of this planet. And there's a generation that goes just before us. And some of that group is in this room. There's a generation just not long ago who fought this fight. And took the slings and arrows, and took the castigation, and took the demonization, and fought, and fought, and fought, year after year, and won. God gave that victory, and you're going to just fumble the ball? You're going to stand before Jesus and explain, well, it just didn't matter that much, and we had a ball game. It's a 2-day business meeting, people. Show up. The rules are made by the people who show up. And it's not that all the team on the other side's a bunch of bad guys, but they are very mistaken. And we are contending for the most precious things on God's earth, God's gospel, and his missionaries and his institutions. So I just want to give you this thought. I want this to lodge in your mind. Right now, your church is sound, right? But you could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Or maybe you'll serve there another 20 years. And in 20 years, when you die, a pulpit committee largely composed of people who may not even be members of your church yet are going to pick your successor. And the overwhelming odds are they're going to pick your successor from one of those 6 seminaries. And that man or woman is going to undo absolutely everything you did with your life. So perhaps you better take it seriously now while you can. Because the people you love and shepherd are at risk, and it's just a matter of when. This matters. Show up.
That's a good word. Well, well said, Rod. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy, and these are important issues, man. And it's one thing to kind of engage on social media. It's really cool to have these guys here live and in person and sharing how the Lord is using you. So thank you very much. They're going to be here this afternoon, I believe so. So hopefully you get a chance to at least shake their hand and so forth. Thank the Lord for this precious panel today, all right? Love you guys. Thank you so very much. That was fantastic.